Few places on Earth house as many deadly and terrifying creatures as the continent of Australia. Australia is home to hundreds of venomous species, including snakes, spiders, and jellyfish, not to mention countless mammals and reptiles found nowhere else in the world. As scary as they seem, the animals living in Australia today pale in comparison to the monsters that once inhabited this prehistoric continent. Let's journey back in time to the Pleistocene epoch, which began about 2.6 million years ago. During the Pleistocene, the Australian continent had nearly reached its current position, drifting northward over tens of millions of years after splitting from the supercontinent Gondwana. As Australia moved, continental uplift gradually reshaped the continent's topography, contributing to an extensive chain of mountains and plateaus, known today as the Great Dividing Range. By the early Pleistocene, much of Australia was already covered in diverse and richly populated biomes, like tropical forests and vast open woodlands. These regional environments were filled with iconic Australian plants, like fire-resistant eucalyptus trees and flowering acacia. Countless grasses, shrubs, and other understory plants also grew along the ground, supporting a diverse food chain of Australian animals. The Pleistocene is often known as the Age of Megafauna, a time when continents like Australia teemed with the gigantic ancestors of many modern species. One of the most dominant animals was an ancient marsupial called Thylacoleo, the largest carnivorous mammal to ever live in Australia. Thylacoleo weighed up to 160 kilograms, comparable in size to female lions and tigers. Though not actually a feline, Thylacoleo was superficially cat-like, with large claws, powerful forelimbs, and jaws as strong as today's lions. Unlike big cats, Thylacoleo probably was not a fast runner, rarely chasing after its prey. Instead, it ambushed other animals by hiding among dense vegetation and surprising them with a powerful bite. Some paleontologists believe Thylacoleo also climbed trees. After killing an animal, they may have dragged its body onto a high branch to protect it from carnivores and scavengers. Thylacoleo was a dominant hypercarnivore, but it faced stiff competition throughout the Pleistocene from a giant reptile called Megalania. This animal was an enormous relative of today's monitor lizards and one of the scariest reptilian predators since the fall of the dinosaurs. Megalania grew up to 7 meters long. With powerful jaws and likely some toxic venom, it became a dominant apex predator across Australia's forests and woodlands. Scientists believe Megalania may have hunted like Komodo dragons today, using venom to immobilize large mammals, snakes, and birds. While Megalania had no natural predators, it may have sparred with other giant animals within the rich forests of ancient Australia, including other Megalania. Giant mammals and reptiles topped food chains across the Australian continent, but tropical and subtropical regions were also home to some terrifying arthropods. Many species of cockroaches lived in prehistoric Australia, including some that were several inches long. These gigantic roaches typically crawled along the forest floor and burrowed into the soil. Though terrifying to look at, these animals were relatively harmless. Many played vital roles in their ecosystems by consuming organic matter that fell from bushes and trees. One of their modern relatives, the giant burrowing cockroach, is even kept by some locals today as household pets. Stepping on an ancient cockroach would not be dangerous, but prehistoric arachnids were a different story. During the Pleistocene epoch lived the ancestors of Australia's largest and deadliest modern spiders. Trapdoor spiders dug holes in the ground, building secret dens from which they surprised their prey. Under rocks and logs hid the ancestors of giant huntsman spiders. Known for their size and speed, these proficient hunters sunk their fangs into anything from insects to small vertebrates. However, the most dangerous arachnids lived on the forest floor, creating silk-lined burrows with trip lines radiating out. Funnel-web spiders rank among the most venomous creatures on the planet. Behind their fangs are glands gushing with venom potent enough to kill animals many times their size. We can approximate which arachnids existed during the Pleistocene epoch, but our knowledge of specific species is somewhat limited. Fossilized arachnids can be rare because their exoskeletons don't preserve as well as bones. However, some fossils have been beautifully captured in amber. These fossils give us insights into the anatomies and behaviors of spiders dating back millions of years. Even though we can't identify every species, prehistoric Australia had no shortage of giant and deadly arachnids. So far, we've focused on animals found in Australia's tropical and temperate regions, but much of Australia was very dry, even millions of years ago. Open savannas stretched across a large portion of the mainland's interior. These ecosystems were usually hot and had limited water availability. Many factors contributed to the aridity here, including the area's position under the subtropical high-pressure belt, which creates descending dry air. But there was another fascinating factor at play. On the west side of the Great Dividing Range, moisture begins to dwindle due to a natural phenomenon called a rain shadow. Rain shadows occur when mountains block nearby areas from receiving significant precipitation. Much of Australia's moisture comes from the Pacific Ocean, carried ashore by prevailing winds. That moisture creates rainfall along the continent's northern and eastern coasts. However, the Great Dividing Range prevents moisture from reaching more of the interior. Over millions of years, this rain shadow, the subtropical high-pressure belt, and many other factors dramatically impacted regional ecosystems, creating the arid expanse known today as the Australian outback. This vast, dry area was, and still is, a challenging place to live. Water supplies were limited, the soil was low in nutrients, and wildfires were commonplace. The plants that survived there were often tough and fire-resistant, like Banksia plants. Others had extremely long root systems to access water stored far below the surface. These durable plants grew across the outback, creating a range of habitats from open woodlands to grass savannas and dry plains. These arid and semi-arid habitats supported many types of grazers and browsers. The largest was probably Diprotodon, a gigantic relative of modern wombats. Weighing upward of 2,500 kilograms, Diprotodon stood almost 2 meters tall at the shoulder and measured around 4 meters from head to tail. Paleontologists believe Diprotodon traveled in small family groups. Females and adolescents may have marched across these ancient savannas, eating grasses, shrubs, and low-hanging leaves. Diprotodon likely shared its ecosystems with another remarkable herbivore, a giant genus of kangaroo called Procoptodon. Doubling or tripling the weight of modern kangaroos, Procoptodon weighed upward of 240 kilograms. They also stood over 2 meters tall. Because of their incredible mass, we are not entirely sure how these unique animals got around. It's fun to imagine them hopping, like kangaroos today. But this style of locomotion would have put too much stress on their legs. Instead, most researchers think Procoptodon used a form of bipedal locomotion, almost like a human. As they strode around, these gigantic kangaroos flourished throughout the Pleistocene, and even lived long enough to encounter and spar with early humans. Alongside giant marsupials, the Australian outback was inhabited by a bizarre family of gigantic birds, sometimes called mihirungs or thunderbirds. These huge, flightless animals ran on 2 legs, using their long necks and robust bills to feed on leaves, fruit, shoots, and pods. Though they resembled modern emus or ostriches, mihirungs were more closely related to today's waterfowl and only evolved emu-like qualities after losing their ability to fly. As their wings shrank, the rest of their bodies grew, resulting in giant, robust body shapes. Many species of mihirungs died out during the Pliocene epoch, but one survived through the late Pleistocene. Known as Genyornis newtoni, this species survived by foraging in various habitats, such as the water's edge. It had a robust, triangular bill adapted to eating a variety of plants, including aquatic flora. But even the last mihirungs went extinct about 50,000 years ago. Still, they remain a captivating form of prehistoric Australian life. Today, Australia is known for some of the world's most colourful marine ecosystems, including a reef system so large that it's visible from space. The Great Barrier Reef, in its current structure, formed about 9,000 years ago, but Australian waters have been brimming with life for millions of years, including some pretty terrifying animals. The most infamous was Megalodon, a giant prehistoric shark that lived around the world, including Australia, from about 23 to 3.6 million years ago. Megalodon stretched up to 18 meters long and weighed about 30 times more than today's great white sharks. It was not only the most massive fish to ever exist, but also had the strongest bite of any known animal. Megalodon's huge muscular jaws generated an estimated 108,000 to 182,000 newtons of force, powerful enough to kill even the biggest creatures in the sea. Megalodon did not survive into the Pleistocene epoch, but many other ferocious species did, including tiger sharks, hammerheads, and great whites. Toothy fish weren't the only deadly animals swimming in Australia's prehistoric waters. Some of the deadliest marine animals were the cubozoans, or box jellies, found drifting with the ocean currents. Today, box jellies are best known for their potent venom. They may look like delicate drifters, but some create toxins potent enough to claim human lives. 1 million years ago, their ancestors may have been just as deadly. Most were found in tropical waters, where they hunted small animals by dragging their tentacles through the water. Anything that stumbled into their arms was injected with a lethal dose of toxins and pulled into their mouths. A remarkable diversity of large and deadly animals lived in Australia during the Pleistocene epoch, but many would not survive until the present day. Roughly 45,000 years ago, a massive extinction event eradicated roughly 88% of Australia's megafauna. Several factors likely contributed to these dramatic die-offs. Climate change may have eliminated food sources, destroyed habitats, and exposed animals to dangerous conditions. Humans played an important role too. The arrival of Aboriginal people in Australia coincides with significant drops in animal populations, specifically large animals hunted for their meat and hides. Dominant species like Megalania and Diprotodon disappeared near the end of the epoch, closing the book on many of Australia's prehistoric giants. While the continent remains full of strange and fascinating wildlife, the monsters of prehistoric Australia were wonders to behold.